Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. It's that time of season again. The Ferrari hype train has officially left the station as rumours are emerging that their simulator shows their new car, codenamed currently the Ferrari 675, is up to, if not more than, a second faster than last year's Ferrari F1-75. If that turns out to be true, by the time they get to track, we could have a new front runner for the start of this season. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today. Ferrari, of course, didn't finish out last season as they would have liked to, and whether this, potential upgrade solves their tyre degradation issues, among other things, that still remains to be seen, and also their, potential strategic and operational problems that Fred Vasseur is probably going to try and solve, might not have done quite yet. Quickly on Ferrari as well, Antonio Giovinazzi and Robert Schwartzman, who's kind of been around the Ferrari camp for quite some time, they're going to share that reserve driver role this season, so that's one update for you guys. But also, last night we saw some rumours circulating that the Ferrari was going to be very strong at the start of 2023, and there was going to be a big article coming out of Formula Uno today describing exactly how. So look, this is simulator data, this is the drivers driving on the sim to see how the car should perform, and it's performed way above a lot of people's expectations. Now, of course, this doesn't indicate necessarily how much progress the other teams have made, or whether this will translate to track, because I remember them saying at the Mercedes before the start of the season last year that their new update with the side pods was going to be a second a lap faster. Turns out that certainly wasn't true based on the results we saw on track. Now, this year, theoretically, the cars will be slower. They've raised the right height to the floor. That reduces some of the downforce from the ground effect on these cars, certainly through the higher speed corners. That could, shave off half a second a lap. Now, the theory was from the FIA that, okay, the teams will probably counter that over the winter, and we might turn up to next year with cars on similar pace that these current cars are on. Apparently, though, the Ferrari is going to be much quicker based on their information. This is the article here from Giuliano De Chessa today. Bit of a bombshell article really discussing many topics, such as the Ferrari 675. I believe they're going to give it another name at some point, but apparently it's at least a second faster than the F1-75 that was last year's car. So from our information, the numbers from the Ferrari simulator are extremely positive, with highly qualified sources revealing that the 2023 car is over 1 second faster than last year's machine. This is an intriguing estimation from the Maranello camp, considering the regulations introduce significant variations in terms of overall aerodynamic loads. The question is, right, is this 1 second faster than their last year's car was at the start of last season, or is this 1 second faster than last year's car was at the end of the season? Because if that's true, then we really do have something on our hands. We knew Ferrari would be competitive this year. There was rumours that they were building a very solid car, but if this is the case plus their engine upgrade, it does make them a scary force. Now look, Ferrari always are scary on paper. Before the season begins, you get 10 races in, and it's always, usually a bit of a different story. And this is usually how things go at this time of year. Red Bull are kind of keeping their cards close to their chest, not really saying too much. Mercedes are downplaying their chances. The Ferrari hype train is like full force into this season. This is our year, all this. Fernando Alonso is talking about how his new team is great and he's feeling in his best shape of his life. Williams are saying they're going to be back in business. It's always the same stories every single year. But nonetheless, this does sound very promising for Ferrari. The most significant changes or improvement for these new generation of cars in 23 will be in the medium and low speed corners, hopefully, certainly for the viewers and I'm sure for the drivers as well. There were rumours that last season the porpoising slowed the cars down by about 7/10, so that's quite a big thing to notice as well here in the article. And also the reduction of understeer theoretically. This is something that they always wanted to go towards, but it does potentially favour some drivers over others. Some drivers like a car that's a bit understeery, which basically means when you turn the wheel into a corner, does the front end of the car respond, or does it, is it a bit of a labour to get it to turn into the corner? Now, some drivers like a car that's very pointy at the front ends. They turn the wheel, it does what it wants, and if the rear end steps out, they have to catch it, then, they've got the talent to do that. Now, other drivers obviously still very talented, but they like their car to behave in a slightly different way. These are just some brief comparisons here with the kind of where the floor is, the 15mm raising there, the 10mm raising here, also the larger wing mirrors on this new generation of cars in 23, but, on the whole, they look relatively similar, but a few key tweaks that shouldn't mean theoretically that Ferrari should be able to unlock another seconds, but apparently they have. Now, as we say, this should potentially favour the reduction in understeer, the likes of Max Verstappen, but also Charles Leclerc, who both like driving kind of a car that's a bit on edge. So it does favour Verstappen to go for the three-peat, absolutely, and their car is going to be no slouch at all. They obviously come into the season with Max Verstappen as favourites for very good reason, but Mercedes, we've seen some good kind of positives from their camp lately suggesting they might be able to get back in the fight, but they're still downplaying their chances of fighting with Red Bull right at the start of the season. Ferrari are pulling no punches, though, with even internal sources within Ferrari suggesting their car is going to be an absolute rocket ship. Now, will it translate into reality? This is the question, and even if it does, is that enough to actually win? Because yes, it might be a second a lap faster, but is that a second a lap faster for one lap of qualifying? Is that a second a lap faster over an entire race distance? Is that considering engine at maximum power? And obviously what it's not considering is potential engine failures and also potential strategy and pit stop errors. Now, it actually goes on to say in the article here further down that Fred Vasseur, the new team principal there, is he's not making any changes now. So, he reckons there's actually similarities here to Kessa between 2017-18 and what it stands at the present day. So obviously, stirring some optimism about they can kind of reinvigorate the title challenge they had during the 2018 season, for example. But he's actually decided to not yet implement any significant changes. Now, there was some rumors maybe a week or so ago that Inaki Rueda, the chief of strategy, was going to get fired by Fred Vasseur, which, I think that's probably going to happen at some point. But clearly Vasseur is saying, look, I'm coming in, I'm not going to make any key changes yet, make sure we can get this new car out onto the track without any disruption as far as he can tell within the relationships there, because, firing Binotto was certainly a controversial one within the guys at Ferrari themselves. So Vasseur comes in, he's opting for continuity now. This might be welcomed at the factory, it might be the right decision to get the best car, but is it the right decision to have the best strategy team? I don't know, right? Because, look, I think that some of those strategy guys, bit questionable, they probably will continue to make mistakes this upcoming season. Vasseur at some point will have the balls to get rid of them. Whether he wants to do that now, whether he feels like it's worth waiting, whether just see how things go, maybe they improve, who knows. But, this is obviously, I'm sure, a bit of a concern for Ferrari fans. The idea that, if I just make this so you can actually fully see all the words here, that the car might be rapid, but it wasn't really the car not being rapid that affected Ferrari last year. It was the strategy, but also the engine failures, and also the tyre degradation in the latter half of the season. Just because they're a second lap faster on paper doesn't mean that over the course of 30 laps, the tyres won't degrade as they did last year. Now, there have been some suggestions that the changes for this season will actually affect the tyre degradation in a better way. The cars should maybe degrade their tyres less than they were before, so the drivers can push harder. So obviously a few good reasons to believe that Ferrari are going to be very competitive. And obviously they were very competitive. And in qualifying, they had more poles last year than any team, right? More than Red Bull, of course. Only Mercedes only had one, and Haas had one, of course, towards the end of the season, technically in Brazil. But Leclerc had more poles than any other driver. So they were great over one lap pace. Over the race, it wasn't so good. So we can maybe expect more of the same here. The Ferrari 675, as it's currently being codenamed, I think it will have a new name over the coming weeks, more than likely. It's going to be a great car. It's going to be fast, as it usually is, but it's the classic Ferrari thing. Can they keep up with development? That's another key component, because they were great at the start of last season. They'll probably be great again based on all the information that we currently have. Can they maintain that advantage over the season? Will Mercedes catch up and overtake? Will Red Bull catch up and overtake? And if Ferrari start behind, and then it's probably chalked for their season, right? Especially because Ferrari are a second lap faster in the simulator, we don't know how much faster Mercedes are. We don't know how much faster Red Bull are. They like to keep their cards a bit closer to the chest than Ferrari do, whereas, Ferrari, the hype train, as I say, has officially left the station on this one, in addition to the fact that their engine, their horsepower gains, are apparently more significant than any other team. We don't really know anything from Renault and Alpine, so we can't really comment on that too much. There's rumours that Mercedes are going to gain 16 horsepower, Red Bull gain about 10 horsepower, Ferrari might gain 30 horsepower. There's been some discussion on whether, how legitimate this really is. There's an argument to say that the 30 horsepower gain is over the most detuned version that maybe they were using back in Mexico, for example. So, maybe there's a chance that it's more like a 15 horsepower gain, which would put them more in line with Mercedes, which is another way to look at this potentially. Tough to say. But how optimistic are you going to be? Because, I'm sure a lot of Ferrari fans are going to be cautiously optimistic about these numbers, which I think is understandable. But I know that many Ferrari fans have been hurt by Ferrari too many times in the past, and there's still so many questions about Ferrari from an organizational perspective that it's really difficult to imagine until they finally do it, them actually putting a title charge together. Think back, how long ago was it they won a World Drivers' Championship? 2007, right, with Kimi Raikkonen. So, that is an awful long time ago. 15 or so years, 16 years it will be this time since they actually did it. Now, we know that their philosophy was last season going into the year, be competitive in 2022, and then try and win in 23, 24, something like that. Now, Binotto, because he started so well, probably lost his job, really, by not delivering on the optimism they had at the start of the season. But that's certainly not going away this season either. And, here we go. The Ferrari hype train is absolutely back in business, ladies and gentlemen. And as I say, the other parts of the story are coming together nicely, right? Toto Wolff has warned against their chances and said they're like, look, they could still be as far behind as they were at the end of last season, which, you know, kind of is the classic thing that Mercedes do. At the start of last season, people thought they were sandbagging because they usually do it, but it was kind of boy who cried wolf, and then eventually their car actually wasn't particularly good. Red Bull won't probably say much, even though we might talk about that one tomorrow. And also, Fernando Alonso, as I just mentioned, it's that time of year where he's talking about, you know, being in top form. Here he is doing some sort of reaction time test simulator type thing, so he's obviously very confident in the Aston Martin and also in his own abilities. So all the stars align for the start of the Formula 1 season, as it usually is. But will Ferrari's story this year finally be a little bit different and actually be able to lead Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz to a driver's title? More likely Charles Leclerc, given the lack of understeer these new cars may have in 23. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.